Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. Today we have a manga review of chapter 904, The Entrance of the Revolutionary Army Commanders. And this week was pretty surprising for me. I definitely was not expecting this much information about the Revolutionary Army. Although I think that's because reading the series for over a decade has just sort of conditioned me into thinking that we will never find out more about this mysterious organization. Even with this chapter, they are still probably the most shrouded entity in the series, which is just ridiculous because they're such a huge influential force in the world. Moving on though, the key piece of information we did learn this chapter is that the Revolutionary Army plans on declaring war on the Celestial Dragons during Reverie. Now this declaration could be something as simple as sending an imposing message to the event while every major world leader is gathered at once. But you know, since Dragon is summoning what seems to be the entire Revolutionary Army forces, it feels a lot like they are planning a full-on assault. And if that does happen, then this arc has the potential to become like a mini Marineford. And what I mean by that is an arc that features characters who we love on both sides of a conflict with potentially heartbreaking results. Not that anybody major would die, you know, like Ace did, but I could see someone like, say, Nefertari Cobra dying in some way as a result of Dragon's actions. And if something like that did happen, that would put a very interesting spin on his relationship with Luffy. Luffy would definitely never forgive Dragon if he was somehow involved in the death of Vivi's father. And that notion brings up something I've never really considered. And that is exactly how are the Revolutionary Army going to interact with the Straw Hats in the future? Their end goals do kind of correlate to some degree, you know, neither of them are a fan of the world government or the Celestial Dragons, but their goals aren't entirely in concert. And even though there are strong allies like Sabo and Ivankov, I would not write off the possibility of the Straw Hats one day having to fight the Revolutionary Army, and possibly even Luffy fighting Dragon. Anyway, that's an odd tangent, so let's talk about some newly introduced commanders, eh? Oddly enough, Belo Betty is the commander who most stands out during this chapter, which is pretty impressive considering we also saw an Okama Giant. Belo Betty stands out for two pretty big reasons, all courtesy of the open jacket bare-chested style that Oda likes to go for from time to time. Oh, and she's also smoking, which I think almost always happens when he draws a female character like this. The most obvious example is when Smoker got put into Tashigi's body, but there are definitely some others out there like Rindo of the Kuja Pirates. So it does feel a little bit like Oda is going back to a bit of a cookie-cutter template here, but that's alright because One Piece needs more badass women. And this particular character has quite an intriguing devil fruit actually, the Kobu Kobu no Mi, which apparently means something along the lines of the encourage fruit. Although the way it was translated here is the cheer fruit, which is much more boring. Which I don't think quite does justice to this very bizarre and unique fruit. And I call it that because it doesn't easily fall into one of the three categories of devil fruits. By default it probably has to be a paramecia because encouragement isn't an element, nor is it an animal, and the paramecia class is the one that gets stuck with super weird powers like this. But with that said, this power could not be more convenient for the Revolutionary Army. The power to inspire action is quite possibly one of the most dangerous abilities we've ever seen in the series. I mean, you only need to take a cursory look through history to find out that there are an incredible amount of world-changing events that have been inspired by the words or actions of a singular figurehead. Both good and bad, of course. And actually, you know what? If anybody was going to have a power like this, I would have assumed it would be Dragon himself, given that he is the overall leader, and what we've seen of him so far doesn't exactly exude natural charisma. But hey, he is the father of Luffy, the man who somehow gets just about everybody to join his side, so we probably just haven't seen him work the old Monkey D charm just yet. Next up is Morley, who is probably my personal favorite so far. I loved how he asked Pinkbeard if he had a crush on him, and Pinkbeard's outraged comment that this was a false accusation out of nowhere made me laugh a lot more than I think I should have. But yeah, the Okama characters in One Piece are always good fun because they have such pronounced personalities and it's really easy to get a feel for them very quickly. And Morley also appears to be a fruit user, although his fruit wasn't named, but it does look very similar to Pika's power, in that he is able to manipulate the ground somehow, molding it like clay. Whatever it is, I don't really find it as interesting as Belo Betty's power, but hey, new devil fruits are always welcome. Also, is it just me, or does Morley seem to be a little bit small to be a giant in One Piece? I know they all come in different sizes, but in some panels comparing him to the rest of the commanders, he just doesn't seem all that much bigger. In any case, let's move on to our plague doctor looking commander, Karasu. So Karasu means crow in Japanese, which makes every bit of sense considering his design. Of course, the most interesting thing about him is we now finally know the answer to the mystery of those crows Sabo was riding to get off Dressrosa. So at some stage, Karasu was definitely present on Dressrosa, but probably not for the whole conflict, more as a chaperone to Sabo. The question now becomes exactly what is this power? It looks like a combination of a Zoan and a Logia, like a man who is made entirely of crows. Although it's more than likely that he is a Logia of some sort of element, maybe feathers or something stupid like that. It's just hard to tell because they're all pure black and the darkness fruit is kind of taken. But all in all, he's a cool looking character and I do look forward to seeing more of him. The final Commander Lindbergh is probably my least favorite so far, hence why I've put off talking about him until now. He looks like a mink, which would be cool actually. The Revolutionary Army strikes me as an organization that strives to achieve balance between races. So it would be cool if they had a mink in addition to their giant, and of course the Fishman hack. And we should probably also talk about a very minor character introduced and defeated this chapter, Pinkbeard. Essentially, he's an absolute nobody with a teeny tiny bounty acting under the umbrella of Blackbeard. So I do quite like that Blackbeard has begun gracing some of his underlings with colours and beard names of their own, although I imagine he'd run out of them pretty quickly if he keeps on handing them out to small fish like this. I mean, soon he'll probably have to move on to more subtle shades of colours like teal beard or cerulean beard. But you know what, actually, Pinkbeard is defeated by a rather familiar character who you may not recognize at first. I say that because I sure as hell didn't. I thought she was just a random townsperson, but a lot of people have pointed out that this is actually Moda from Ace's cover story. This girl actually saved Ace's life, well, what little he had left of it, I guess, and then Ace reunited Moda with her parents. It's a nice little random story that I never thought was going to really go anywhere, kind of like Hachi's cover story actually, but you know, that one turned out to be quite relevant as well. But Moda's presence here actually speaks a lot to Bello Betty's powers that I was talking about before. Essentially, with a little bit of inspiration, Moda became strong enough, well, maybe not strong enough, but driven enough to defeat a pirate worth 52 million berries, and yeah, I know I said that was a petty amount before, but that's no small sum to an average human being. So yeah, once again, that devil fruit is actually pretty disgustingly strong. But really, other than some great character introductions, there wasn't a hell of a lot more to this chapter. Although one nice piece of information we did have is the idea that nations have to pay gold to the Celestial Dragons, a sort of tax I guess. And I'm now wondering if every nation within the world government has to pay that price in order to become and stay a member. It would make sense from an economic standpoint since the forces of the world government would be obligated to protect and dedicate resources to a particular kingdom, but let's be real here. We're talking about the Celestial Dragons, and they are almost certainly just living the sweet life with the money from God knows how many nations. And another intriguing bit of info we received is that we finally have a timeline for the Reverie. It begins in 2 days, and that kind of surprises me because I thought that we would already be able to launch straight into it by now. But the fact that Oda has purposely placed us an entire 2 days away from the event signals to me that there's actually quite a bit going to happen before the Reverie commences. There's even the possibility that we're just going to skip straight ahead to Wano, spend a couple of days there and return to the aftermath of Dragon's plans. I mean, that probably won't happen because Weekly Shonen Jump have made a big thing about the Reverie arc beginning, and if that is indeed the case, then this 2 whole days thing makes me think that this arc might be quite decently sized actually, rather than the standard catch up with the world side trip. But that pretty much does it for chapter 904. This is the very first chapter in the entire series to focus exclusively on the Revolutionary Army. A bit short, being only 15 pages long, but I feel like these larger than life characters more than make up for the low page count. If you enjoyed this video, then feel free to like, favorite, or subscribe, and please do comment with your thoughts on the chapter. This has been the Grand Line Review, and I'll see you next time.